And why not? Just for fun. As of right now, it is extremely dull. I would not recommend doing that. I figured it was time to pick up a knife sharpener because, well, I'm just no good with one of these. And if anything, I make the blade duller. So I followed the link on Project Farm. He does a bunch of testing of different stuff. I actually will leave a link to his channel because this guy does some serious testing. Anyway, I took his advice, and based on his testing, this looked like the best sharpener for me. Now, the reason I made this video is there is a bit of a learning curve, and he actually said the same thing in his video as well. So here's what I've figured out just using this thing briefly, how to make the most out of your work sharpener. Start and stop. Really pay attention to this or you will round the tip of your blade and you'll grind off more in one area than the other. Only pull the trigger on the motor when you're ready to start sharpening and stop it before the blade comes completely off. Also, don't rush how fast you're pulling the knife through. According to the instructions, it says only about 1 inch per second. Whatever the first belt that you're going to use for the guide, follow it and use the strokes on the same side until you get a little bit of a burr. If you're having trouble detecting the burr because this is your first time sharpening, use a paper towel and just rip off a little piece, and it's a very easy way to feel if that's kind of hooking on the back end of the knife. You'll want to make sure that you've got a burr along the entire side of the knife before you move on to the next step. Make sure that you count the number of passes on the same side of that knife and then use the same amount of strokes and the same speed for the other side of the blade. After that, when you switch to your second belt, you're going to use alternating sides to make sure that you get the sharpest knife possible. Another mistake I made was using way too much pressure. There is a little bit of a guide on the front. You don't have to push it down on there. Pretty much the weight of the knife is going to work the best. You should see a little bit of a dip in the belt when you have the knife on there, and that's going to work the best to get the sharpest edge. Changing the belts is a little bit difficult. It's just a little tricky and it takes a couple of seconds. So if you've got a bunch of knives to sharpen to, after you've kind of played with one knife to see how it works for you, you're best off doing a bunch so that it eliminates the need to change a whole bunch of belts all the time. I really like the Ken Onion version of this sharpener. It comes with this handy quick start guide, and it's something that I'm just going to leave it in the box with a sharpener. It saves me having to pull out the manual each time I want to use this thing, and it's a great little quick reference on what angle to set the sharpener to and kind of what to do to get your sharpest knife with a variety of different knives. You'll also want to make sure that you're doing your best to keep your backside of your knife right up against that guide for the entire pull. You don't want it tipping off, changing your angle. That's going to really affect the sharpness of your blade. And who would have thought just following the instructions can get you sharpness that's crazy like this right down to the tip. This is a paper towel. And I found that the paper test works pretty good, pretty easily. You can get it that sharp. But once you can get down to just pushing through a paper towel and letting the knife cut through, that was really the ultimate test for me to see if it was really sharp. I mean, ultimately, yes, you'd probably need a sharpness tester. Don't have one of those. I'm not going to get one of those. I just want some sharp knives. And why not? Just for fun. Let's see if I can sharpen this thing up. As of right now, it is extremely dull. I would not recommend doing that on any blade. But yes, I've had it for many years. It's a great little bushwhacker for me in the backyard. Comes with a nice case. Let's see if I can get this thing back to some kind of a living edge that makes it useful again. Because right now it's just, it's a lot like a stick if you're trying to chop down anything with it. As you can see, this knife was definitely super neglected. So I'm going to be using the neglected step under the hunting knife for the settings and follow that through. It says medium speed and an angle of 25 degrees. And we're only going to use the 4 belts. So I'm at about 20 passes with the most coarse belt on this blade. I don't know what these Belizeans did with that steel, but this is unbelievably hard. The other knives it made quick work of, but the Machete, oh my goodness, I don't know if you can see it at all in the video, but I'm just now getting that edge cut. But there were spots where I hadn't even, where the belt hadn't even touched yet, and there still is a few. Do my best here to see if we can get this camera to focus in on it. But right here, there's still some spots that the edge hasn't even been touched yet. So I've taken off almost nothing for steel. So it's clearly extremely hardened, whatever this metal is. Way to go, Belizeans. I'm going to take and run it through, it looks like maybe 1 or 2 more times we'll do the trick to get that last little bit out, and then I can get to polishing it up and seeing what she'll do. Well, it took probably a good 30 minutes of grinding on that blade, and I honestly can say I still haven't seen that I've taken much off. So that's some incredibly hard steel, whatever it's made of. But we did manage to get an edge on it, so let's give her a go. That thing hasn't been that sharp in a lot of years. Pretty pumped about it, actually. It was a souvenir from the place I was born. Haven't been there in a whole whack of years. So it's pretty nice to get that back up. Hopefully this helped you guys take some of the learning curve out of the Ken Onion edition of the Work Sharp. The rest of the instructions are pretty straightforward, but took me a little bit of finessing and kind of fandangling to get the most of the sharp knives. The first knife I kind of tried. I had to sharpen it a number of times before I finally got it nice and sharp. And I ended up taking a ton of metal off of it. So if you guys are doing this, grab an old junky knife, start there, and once you have it figured out, then grab the knives out of your knife block like I did and sharpen them all up.